Hello, hello.
How are you, Ralph?
I'm very good, Martin. How are you?
I'm doing well.
So,
welcome back, everyone.
Another episode of the Lume Plotters.
Yes, plotting away still.
But today we are not the Lume Plotters. We will be the date plotters.
The date window plotters.
Our topic today is date windows. Do you need a date on your watch, or do you want a date on your watch? And where should the date window be?
But yes, and this is a very polarizing topic, surprisingly, which your average person would think, why does anybody care?
But, yes, but and we are, of course, have controversial opinions. But before we start, what's on your wrist?
I am wearing my Rolex Submariner 114060.
Right. Is there a reason why you say no date? Well, why you don't say no date? Sorry.
I highly believe that date windows are not okay. I did, before this watch, have the 11610, I believe it was. What? The 116, whatever it is. The date version of this watch.
Okay.
And I sold it. I got rid of it specifically to buy the no date version because the date bugged me so much.
Now, I was referring more to the people that say Submariner no date, even though that is actually wrong because there is a Submariner, which is your watch.
Correct. I have the original Submariner. There is no Submariner no date.
Exactly. And there is a Submariner date.
Exactly, which is not the original Submariner.
Correct. So yes,
this is the Submariner, colloquially known as the no date Submariner.
Yeah.
And you,
I am wearing the Seiko SPB 149. It's a 200-meter diver.
Which you may have learned about in our last episode.
Hopefully you learned a lot, or we confused you a bit. And I love that watch. It has this blue dial. It was a limited edition of a typical Seiko limited edition, like 6,000.
10,000 pieces.
which is it's not really very limited. But anyhow, I love that watch. It has a nice bezel action. Very smooth.
So we're going to do this now every time? Mm-hmm. You have to show if we...
Anyhow.
Okay, once again, Submariner. Here we go.
Yeah, that's crisper.
Oh, man, I was actually using the dive bezel to time our podcast length, and now it's gone.
Oh, damn. Okay, we're 3 minutes in, and we haven't yet scratched the surface of the date window. So you have no date on your watch. So, I have one at 3.
Yes, you have one at 3. I have no date window, and I have to say in my entire collection, I have only 2 watches with dates. I mentioned this prior, I believe, in a different podcast. One is a GMT.
Yeah.
I believe if you're traveling, a date could come in handy.
Yes.
And secondly, I have a date just, which I think horologically speaking is a significant enough watch to get me to get a date window.
But a date window that is also that emphasized with the Cyclops on it,
yes,
right?
Correct.
And like I think with your previous Submariner.
You're leaning into it, right? With the previous Submariner, I didn't like it because I think the Submariner's design stands alone by itself. And the date just... The design of the date just is what it is because of the Cyclops. So it's quintessential.
And I think the Cyclops has been such a trademark for Rolex.
It has. And many people have copied it. Yeah. Like I cannot believe Tag Heuer is copying it. I mean, Tag Heuer does their own stuff. Why? I understand it when some, small company does it just because they want to look like Rolex, but Tag Heuer is a massive company. Why would they do that?
Yeah. The other thing is, if you have ever looked at the date window on the dial from the side, right? Not going through the Cyclops.
Yeah.
It's surprisingly small.
It is very tiny, very tiny.
So that shows like this, the Cyclops is really magnifying a lot.
And the older you get, the more you like it.
Tell me about it.
Your eyesight gets worse and you can see stuff. So I do like that. And this part of me is bugged by the fact that a day date does not have a Cyclops on the day function.
Right.
If you're going to have 2 cutouts in the dial, have 2 Cyclopses or have 0 Cyclopses. Don't just do half a Cyclops. It doesn't make sense.
But there's a couple of Seikos that have
the full Cyclops on both.
That have this very
Correct.
long,
yes.
elongated
The new
Cyclops.
Monster has it. Yes.
I think that looks awkward.
Interesting, to say the least. All right. But nonetheless, let's talk date windows.
Yeah.
I despise them. Ralph loves them. Why and why not?
So for me, it's very simple. I actually can't remember the date a lot. I don't know why, but it's usually I need to work a lot with dates, and I need to know the current date for my work and for just, general appointment taking and other things. I really need to understand what is actually the date. And for whatever reason, I'm not particularly good at remembering it. So I actually check the date a couple of times a day on my watch. I don't know why I do it. I mean, everybody's different, but this is what I actually do. So I appreciate if there is a date. And if I set it wrong, bad things happen. in my appointment keeping and other things.
So you mentioned that when you wear a no-date watch, like the one you recently acquired, what happens when you look down?
That's okay. Then I'll just have to check it somewhere else. But I do actually look at my watch first to check what's the day today. So
I'm the opposite. I do not work with dates. I do not need dates ever, hardly ever. I would say maybe once a month. I need to know what date it is. Otherwise, I generally have an idea. Today is what, the 10th, 9th, 8th, 11th. So I have a ballpark idea of what it is, but that's kind of as far as I can get. But the thing is, I used to have a date on my watch. My first couple watches all had dates, and I got used to it. And when I got my first no-date watch, which was my Speedmaster Professional, and I started wearing that, and I realized there's no date. I got used to it.
Okay.
It was weird for a while, and then I got used to it, and then I just stuck with it ever since. And mostly because my horological kind of passion dictates that dive watches, for instance, don't need a date. Why would you be diving and checking the date when you're 300 meters down? You don't need to.
No, you don't.
At the same time, if you are, flying the space shuttle, do you need the date?
Well, if you're in space, generally you have like 45-minute day and night timings, right? So if you're in the orbit, then
so you do not need a date.
Not necessarily, no.
Exactly. So when these watches, their pure function, their essence are to do certain things, you don't need anything added to it. In addition to this, it's strange to me that the cheapest movements all have date functions. Why that is, it could be anyone's question, but you talk about the cheap cheap movements. The Ep08 the Sellita SW200. These are your workhorse basic movements, cheapest ones you can get. If you want a no date, you have to pay more, which is counterintuitive.
So basically, you have to eliminate the date, which is
eliminate
extra
it,
feature.
and then also the crown position has to be eliminated. Don't even get me started on ghost date positions. Ghost date, for anybody that doesn't know, is when you pull out the crown, and instead of immediately being able to set the time, you have to pull it out a second time, and
to the second
there's
position,
a middle position there that would be for a date function, because that movement that you have in your watch would have traditionally had a date. So all they did was basically cover it up.
Remove the disc.
Some remove the disc. Some don't even bother to do that.
All right.
A friend of mine has a watch. I don't remember which one it was, but he said they didn't bother to remove the date disc, and every night at midnight you hear a click. So, it's just cost cutting.
Or if you said it wrong, you hear this click at 12 o'clock at noon.
Or you can
because
see
you can't even, you don't even know. Yeah,
exactly.
That's too funny. Yeah. Anyhow, so I think, having the date or liking the date is a very personal thing. You don't like it, I like it. But now the next thing is, if you have a date, where should it be on the dial? Which position is the ideal position for you to have a date window?
The invisible position, where it doesn't exist.
No. We said already.
All right. We have to have one. All right. I'm going to go with your traditional tried and true 3 o'clock. I think 3 o'clock, it messes with the symmetry of the watch, but the watch designers can lean into that and use that like with the Cyclops and accentuate it as a thing on the watch that's special.
Okay, but I think what we also could do is there's some
oddball positions.
Odd positions. Recently, I saw a new watch, a new Tag Heuer. I think it was a new one, a new reissue, I think, that had the date at 12 on a chronograph.
Before we get 12, let's start first about what was after 3 o'clock was the original, right?
So my point is, when there is something that is the chronograph in its resting position is at 12. Is at 12. So that means the second hand of the chronograph function is always blocking the date unless you're timing something.
Correct. Genius.
So what were they thinking? I don't know. But I think 3 o'clock is probably the most common.
Let's talk. Okay, so then after 3 o'clock, what happened? So first, let's go back in time. No dates were the norm.
Yeah.
Then after no dates, we ended up with pointer dates.
Pointer dates also very nice.
After pointer dates, Rolex introduced the self-changing date window in the date just.
Yeah.
That was the first of its kind. Mm-hmm. Then after that was at 3 o'clock. Right? The original timing. Then after that, I would say nothing really happened with date windows for 60 years.
I think
everyone kept it at the same place. 3 o'clock. And the first that I remember changing was Omega putting it at 6 o'clock on the Aquaterras. And that was like 2010, 2015.
I don't know if you saw that actually before. I think there's certainly certain watches that had the date window at different positions, because in the end it's just
let's talk about 9 o'clock position.
Just a cutout, right?
Yes, of course.
So
not quite. It's a cutout and the disc is inserted one way or the other.
Yeah.
Because if you cut it out on the left hand side, it would be upside down. Mm-hmm. If you have the same
Correct.
date window.
You have to put the different disc in.
Yes.
I have seen, because it's a bit of a pet peeve of some of our watch enthusiast friends, I have seen the weirdest date positions. 1:30. One of the oddest ones. Gérard Perregaux has done that a few times on their square watches and also on round watches. It's very weird if you see it there. Me personally, I'm actually a fan, and now bear with me, of the 4:30 date position.
So the 4:30, I was just thinking the 4:30, the big dates at 4:30 that Glashütte does.
Yeah.
Those are
the
nice.
Panorama dates. That's very nice, the Pano dates. But even if it's a normal date, like on my Blancpain bathyscaphe that we discussed last episode, actually, because it's a blue dial, it's a blue disc with white numerals on it.
It blends.
It's only there if you want to look at it. It really is not distracting. It doesn't draw attention to itself. It's there if you need it, but it's not there if you don't need it. And it doesn't get in the way of the big Lume plots. Mm-hmm, if you actually use the watch for diving and you need to look at the time.
So this was one of the things that people say is symmetry of Lume plots, right?
Yeah.
So that would not be in the way at all.
On the other hand, I have to say that at 3 o'clock, it does go with the crown. It just blends in. That's sort of the side. 6 o'clock, I think, is more symmetrical. I agree. My Seamaster 300 has it on 6 o'clock, and it's a lovely position there. But again, date window is colored in the same color as the dial. I have a blue dial version. So it makes it just disappear to a certain extent. You can look, it's just very inobtrusive. It's
so on my Grand Seiko GMT, it's at the 3 o'clock position, and they framed it very nicely, and the date disc is even brushed silver color, and my dial is opaline, so it's a very, or like a cream colored dial with a silver date disc, and it just matches. It doesn't try to blend in. So I prefer it when they just say, look, here's the date, it stands out, who cares? And that to me looks really good. What about 9 o'clock?
Very awkward for me. Now that we saw that with a new GMT Master 2 green and
what was the purpose
black.
of it? Why did they switch it?
Because it's a left hand.
But why?
Drive watch.
Why does it matter? I know the answer to this.
You know the answer why it matters?
Yes.
Why they did that?
Why?
Because
you mentioned it already.
For me, it's like even if I wear my watch on the on the right hand, because I'm left-handed, I always feel like I'm still looking for the date window to the right. Because that's where I visually have it in my brain.
It has nothing to do with what you want.
Okay.
It has to do with Rolex, being Rolex.
Okay, Rolex being Rolex.
You mentioned it already.
Okay, what is it?
The Cyclops is a huge IP for Rolex. Right?
Okay.
Right? It's a huge telltale sign that you're wearing a Rolex. When you wear your watch on the left hand, and you have a Cyclops at the 3 o'clock position, the first thing that happens, if you're wearing a long sleeve, a suit or something, the first thing that pops out is the Cyclops. A million miles away, you could tell that person's wearing a Rolex.
Right.
Now, if you're wearing that watch on the other hand, where would the Cyclops have to pop out for somebody to notice you're wearing a Rolex? It would have to be on the 9 o'clock because now it's on your opposite hand.
Really? That's what you think?
Because your sleeve would kind of just come up enough. It wouldn't display the whole watch.
Yes, that's true.
It would only display that 9 o'clock portion of it, which is where the sapphire is, or sorry, the Cyclops is.
Yeah.
So that is why I think they did it, so that people can be like, look, I have a Rolex, because, we know Rolex people. And Rolex wants people to know that other people are wearing a Rolex, right?
Okay.
And that's, I think, the reason this whole 9 o'clock came about. But in the
very interesting.
In the same vein, 9 o'clock date windows, they weren't the first to do it.
No.
Tag Heuer.
Yes, of
Tag Heuer,
course.
The
Yes,
Heuer
they have done that. Yeah.
Datto had a 9 o'clock date window,
but it had the crown on the right. But still, the date on the left.
Yes, it was a normal watch. The only difference was the date. It was their first date complication, hence why they named it the Datto. It was on a Carrera. And it was on the left-hand side because they had a chronograph counter on the opposite side.
So I think that's all nice with these different date window placements. But I want to come back to the pointer date, right?
Okay.
So I find I have one watch only that has a pointer date, and I find it a tiny bit. How do you say? It's not so easy to read. If you only have because that if you have multiple complications on a watch, like a chronograph and other things, and the pointer date can sometimes be a bit hard to read. Right?
So we have to we have to go back into the psychology of telling time. Why do we like digital versus analog or vice versa? Right? You glance, and I noticed this recently because I've been wearing my G-Shocks a lot. With a G-Shock, I have to do mental computations. It tells me 2:35, and I'm like, but what does that mean? Right? You have to mentally, okay, how far along in the day is that? With an analog watch, you glance at it, you see your minute hand, you see your hour hand, you immediately have a relation to that day. And the same thing happens with a date window. If you have a pointer date, it goes around the whole thing. You immediately look at it and you know what part of the month you're in without even computing anything, right? Yes, it might be difficult to tell which one of you, but you can, within +-2, you can easily tell the range. And that's kind of the idea. That's what analog has over digital, is you're able to see these things. Meanwhile, anything digital, you still have to process. And by digital, of course, date discs are digital because they're written out, right? We're not talking digital in the form of quartz movements or LCD crystals. We're talking digital and just written out numbers.
Yeah. No, I think that's a very good point. I mean, you have then the feeling of how far of the month has already elapsed when you're looking at the pointer date. So it's just like, you're halfway through. Which you don't get this. You don't get this with a regular date window. True. That's good. Which leads me to this one watch that I saw recently. This is a relatively new JLC watch. It's a master in the master range, which has a moon phase at 6 o'clock. And with this current version,
the jumping, yeah.
Where they actually, the pointer date jumps from 15 to 16 about, I think, 10 minutes. The time for about 10 minutes on the bottom.
Because it bypasses the entire moon phase complication.
Yeah, so it never blocks the moon phase display. So from the 15th to the 16th, it actually jumps over
a big notch. Which is extremely, I think, difficult for programming
but
this.
Isn't that nice attention to detail?
That is JLC. I remember seeing the old one.
Lovely.
And the old one would kind of sit in the middle of the moon phase, but it was still a fantastic looking watch. I love these master triple calendars.
Very nice. But anyhow, so that's I think you're right. I think when I had my first digital watch, I had the same challenge that I needed to actually mentally translate that into a hands position on a normal watch. But nowadays, I think having lived with digital watches for such a long time, I think I'm okay. But
I don't wear digital very often, so that's my issue, I guess.
But I can see where that's coming from. I think that's definitely something that I can understand.
All right, let me talk about 2 hacks real fast about date windows. If you don't have a date window, if you have a no date watch, if you have a chronograph or a dive watch with a dive bezel, you can hack basically a date function. So for instance, if you have a Submariner or a dive watch, you can set your diving bezel every day to the date that it is. So you can just look briefly and say, okay, I'm at 15. So of course it's not going to go the whole circle because there's not in this case, there's not 60 days, but you could still use the first half of the dial on that disc and or the bezel and just set, 1 click per day. And the same thing goes for a chronograph. You can start and stop. And people have done this.
That's a bit more of a challenge.
It is. You could do it in minutes.
You have to be very focused. Yeah.
No, you just let it run for a minute. Because you're using the 30-minute counter to tell you the day.
Okay.
So you could do that. Or you could do the seconds as well, I guess.
I mean, with a bezel, I definitely can see that happening. With a chronograph,
it's a little bit tougher. And we don't want to put undue stress on movements, but that can also do it.
Yeah, but on the other hand, I think chronograph movements, you don't let it run, right? I mean,
you're stopping it, but I don't know. Does it affect the movement if you let it stop? If you're stopping it and I guess stopping it but not resetting it, does that do anything?
No, I think the I mean, as a non-watchmaker, I'm just saying that very, very confidently, but no, I think it just keeps the teeth. It keeps the teeth in a position.
Yes, but I'm thinking there's going to be a spring somewhere that you're putting under tension.
Right? Not necessarily, because the pressure you apply to the reset button is usually what pushes everything back.
But what about the snap back to 0 when you reset it?
That's what I'm saying. The reset is a very hard push usually in the chronograph, which means you are putting the energy in. It's not a spring that is loaded that automatically unloads with all the energy. It's you are pushing this in.
Okay.
I think.
Maybe.
I think you are pushing the hammer that moves these watches back. Right? So that's, I think.
But then why would it snap back?
It doesn't snap.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, but you're pressing it.
No, you press and then it snaps.
No. I think it's the energy that you put in there.
No, because it's not moving while you're pushing. You push and then it moves.
I don't think so.
I believe so entirely.
I don't think so. I think it is the pushing that actually moves.
Do you have a Speedmaster in here?
Nope. I don't have a Speedmaster.
Do you have a chronograph?
Yes, I do.
Well, which one?
I have a Longines chronograph and with a 7750 based movement. Okay. And I have a Zenith D521 that I can get out of a...
Go grab it. We'll see what happens. No, I'm very curious. I distinctly remember you push and then it snaps. But this can be, once again, comment. Let us know on our Instagram page. Instagram @LumePlotters. Let us know. Are we right? Okay. Are we wrong?
And we
are two fallible human beings. We don't know everything. Right. So do let us know if we messed something up. We did have a few people commenting in, I think it was on one of our first episodes, saying that I was mistaken on when the solid gold GMT yellow gold GMT was discontinued.
Okay.
So people have been communicating with us. So hopefully they continue to do so.
Yeah. Very good, very good. I think I will now go to my watch box and then use a couple of chronographs and press the buttons.
And then, dear listener, you should do the same. Go press some buttons. Always a pleasure. So on that bombshell, I still maintain, I do not like date functions. Ralph
loves date functions.
There you go. So, and it's okay to disagree. Right? That's what we learned a life lesson here. Yeah. It's okay to be
Listen to the next episode of the Lume Plotter with Ralf. Without
Singular. All about how awesome date windows are.
Exactly. All right,
guys. Thanks for listening.
Thanks a lot.
Tune in again next time.
Bye-bye.
Short and steady. It was horrible. Jesus.
4 o'clock is usually his walking time. Yeah, all right. 45 minutes old.
All right. I'm going to also get the fuck out of here. Sheesh. Lots of...